quick introduction. My job is largely to renovate and restore this beautiful building, but also help to give it, restore its meaning to the communities of County Durham. County Durham is in the northeast of England, for those of you who don't know, just south of Newcastle. It is an area which it really only did one thing in its history, and that was mine coal. Over the years, this building has represented probably 2 million miners throughout its history. It was opened in 1915. It's actually the second Durham Miners Hall. The first one was too small for them once they grew. So they built this, and it's known as a workers' palace, built by workers. And it's a statement to coal owners that organised labour had arrived. It was literate, numerate and organised and could negotiate. So that's why it's so grand, but it's purpose-built as a trade union building. These are the people who pioneered the Durham Miners Association. Most of them were primitive Methodists, which, for those of you who don't know that sort of branch of religion, it's sort of Calvinistic. They were nonconformist and they went about social reform with the Bible at their heart. This was taken in 1869 when the union was illegally called together, and they set about getting rid of this, and this is called the bond. It's pretty much an act of slavery where miners had to sign up every year to be a chattel, really, or owned by a colliery owner. And as you can see here, most of these names, this is the contract, most of these names have been written out by the colliery clerk and signed with an X. The union broke this on the basis that if you couldn't write, you probably couldn't read and you wouldn't be able to understand the contract. So in 1871, they got rid of that. And this is the everyday economy that they had to put up with, really. Obviously, it's pre-photography, so it's a sketch of what life might have been like in a coal mine, roughly around 1850, probably slightly before that. But I think these pictures are probably fairly known to you, in that child labour was very, very common in the development of the Industrial Revolution in the UK. So the miners set about organising themselves, and by 1915 they opened this, which is the interior of Redhills. It's called the Pittmans Parliament. And that's exactly what it is. It's styled on a Methodist chapel, which is a nonconformist church, and each seat has a number, and that number relates to the colliery, the pit, which is also a community. When this was opened, there were about 180 delegates to this parliament, which came from communities. There were probably around about 250 pits. Some of them represented more than one pit. But the importance of this, you weren't simply representing your union members, you were also representing the community. So when you came to this parliament to ask for something to be done, you had to then go back to your community and explain whether you'd achieved your objective, whether you had represented your community properly or not. And we think these numbers are incredibly powerful. It's almost quintessential democracy. And the important thing about this is not only was the building built by the collective endeavour of all of those union delegates, but they set about a programme of social reform from this building with their own money, with their own agency and political power, and grew and grew and grew. So probably the high point of this was between the wars, or between the European wars, when they set about metalling roads in pit villages, creating libraries, what they call welfare halls, where a lot of theatre and amateur dramatics and music was played. They built a whole cultural life for one, but they also built social infrastructure on a scale which is really quite remarkable. And that sense of mutuality, and self-help, driven by the vagaries of coal mining and the relationship to capital, built this up. And this is the national strike of 1912, and what you see here is a soup kitchen. Well, the soup kitchen was not provided by, clearly, the coal owners. This was mutual assistance. And that really is one of the main characteristics of community within this county. So back in 2016, we were given the opportunity of going for a Heritage Lottery Fund bid to restore the building, but take with it its values as well. So as the building was a union headquarters, it was never really open to the public. It was part civil service, part Parliament. So we tried some stuff, and we brought groups of 10-year-olds in who did a week-long immersive experience within their own heritage. And you would think a rather stuffy building like this would be uninteresting to children. Far from it. They really, really got the feel that something had gone on here before. Here they're pretending to be monks, because the monks of the 11th century, wherever, were some of the first to mine coal on the local riverbank. And what they're doing here is getting a measure of just how low down a coal seam might be. We brought in 18-year-old art students so that they can interpret the building, and you can see in the back here, you can see in the back here, they're looking at these banners, and the banners are the representation of working class culture. Each village, each lodge, as it's called, would have a banner to represent them in the annual gala. And you can see what they're gathering from this is, making pamphlets and making statements about what the building might represent. And here we go. This is a representation of the Durham Miners Gala with what's called a Lumiere, which was a light show. Durham Miners Gala, for those of you who haven't been, will be on next year. So book second Saturday in July. It's just sensational. It's the largest demonstration of trade union and community values probably in the world. We've used it as a cinema. We brought back the Christmas brass band concert, which had disappeared for over 20 years. And if you want to do that, if you want to come to that, you're very welcome. The last one will be in December before we close. Make sure you bring a good hanky because it's very tearful. So what are we doing new? We went out with a big consultation. First thing we did, we had what we call little big meetings with people from all sectors who either use the building at the moment or would in the future. And we consulted a core group of about 250. We've also done online stuff. And what they told us is they wanted this place to tell stories and tell stories about their belonging. So what we've got here is a very, very flexible, multifunctional space which can tell multiple stories. Either the story of the village you come from, and here you see the banners displayed in the back with state-of-the-art AV, and it will become a place where people can rediscover their belonging. And belonging is a really, really important word in the Geordie dialect. So you can see I'm trying to cover 200 years of history and then to get to the future in a very, very short period of time. So we've established a charity. The project is 7.25 million of money, but the money is secondary to, and the bricks and mortar renovation is secondary to the aims. We want this building to be one of living culture for performance and practice and education. A renaissance, if you like, of that vast culture that the working class of County Durham had built up. 1 minute. Okay, to become a locus of cultural democracy, we'll talk about that hopefully later, and to be an engine to drive community networks and inspire regeneration. Like this. And this is Sacriston, where the woodshed takes youngsters who may otherwise be alienated and shows them what you can do with wood. There are many, many more examples, but I just thought it was such a gorgeous picture, we'd use this one. Lastly, for those of you who might despair about England's chances on Sunday, this is the West Auckland football team, all miners, who in 1911 beat Juventus in Turin 6-1. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.